Oh God. Hello, I'm Samantha Seneviratne. I'm a cookbook author and a food stylist and a contributor to New York Times Cooking. And today I'm going to show you how to make Mississippi mud pie, or at least my version of Mississippi mud pie. This is not a dainty little cake. It has a graham cracker base, a super fudgy chocolate brownie cake at the bottom, then there's chocolate custard, and then a big balloon of whipped cream on top. It's a fun, serious, chocolate forward kind of dessert. So the first thing we need to do to make our graham cracker crust is just throw 15 graham crackers into our food processor. We'll pulse that up. That's the first blitz, but we're just trying to get fine crumbs. I really wanted the graham cracker flavor to be as much of a player in this pie, because otherwise I find that the whole thing, it's very, very, very chocolatey. And I think you kind of need the graham crackers to balance it out a little bit. So now I'm putting it into my springform pan, and I'm gonna use a flat bottomed measuring cup to press my crumbs down and up the sides. So the first step to making our brownie base is to melt together your chocolate and your butter over a double boiler. And that is just to melt the chocolate really gently. Alternatively, you could do this in the microwave. Just do it in short bursts so that you don't burn your chocolate. Okay, that's done. I'm gonna take it off the heat. We're going to add dark brown sugar and some Dutch processed cocoa powder. Now I'm using Dutch processed just because I like the color and the flavor a little bit better. Natural cocoa powder tastes a little bit fruitier to me, but in this recipe you could totally use natural if that's what you have. Mix that together. We also need 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt and some vanilla extract. You want to make sure it's not piping hot, and then you can add your 3 egg yolks. We're making sort of a brownie cake, so it's almost like a flourless chocolate cake. It sort of rises in the oven, it falls a little bit, has a crackly top and a really fudgy center. That's why we're doing this separating the eggs method. We're gonna fold in some whipped meringue, which will give it that loft and help it sort of like rise and fall on itself. Now that's ready. We can whip up our egg whites. Now eggs are much easier to separate when they're cold, but they whip up better when they're warm, so I would separate them and then let them sit at the counter for a minute. And we're gonna whip this up until basically we can't see any more of the yellow tinge of the egg whites, and then that's when we know we can start adding our sugar. That's a pretty good soft peak right there. You could even call that maybe a stiff peak. But anyways, it's perfect. Now we can fold our egg whites into our chocolate mixture, and you can mix that in without worrying too much. We'll put the rest of the meringue into the chocolate mixture. I like to use a big balloon whisk to fold egg whites into things. It sort of folds in much quicker than it would with a spatula, and so you don't have to mix it as much to get it combined. So now we sift over our 1/4 cup of flour and fold that in. Great. And now we can put that into our crust, which will bake for about 10 minutes. And I'm just spreading out. And now this can go back into our oven until a skewer or knife inserted about 1 inch from the edge comes out with moist crumbs. It's a little bit hard to tell when it's completely cooked all the way through, so if you need to sort of lift up the top crust and check it in the center, you can do that. You're gonna cover it with custard anyway, so it doesn't matter. My cake is out of the oven and it's almost completely cool, so now I can get started on my custard. Okay, so the first step to the custard is to put our chocolate and butter into a bowl and set a fine mesh sieve over it and set that aside. Whisk that together. I'm gonna add my milk just a little bit at a time so that I don't have any lumps. We're just making a chocolate pudding basically. And then our 4 egg yolks. That's all mixed together nicely, and we can get this over the stove to thicken up. You can use a spatula before it gets really thick, and then as it starts to thicken, you want to switch to a whisk just so you make sure that you don't have any lumps.
Ooh, yum.
You want to help me?
Yeah. I'll do this.
You want to whisk?
How you whisk? Did you do this?
Yeah. So now I switch to my whisk just to make sure that I get all the sides. You don't get lumps. See, it's like puddingy now. So now we'll put this through our sieve over our butter and chocolate. And the heat from this custard is just gonna melt that butter and chocolate. And don't forget to get the bottom. There's a lot of custard there. And now we'll just let this sit for about a minute so that the heat can melt that chocolate and butter, and then we'll whisk it all together. Once the melted chocolate gets in there, it's like the most luscious, rich chocolate pudding you've ever had. And if you wanted to simplify your life, you could just make chocolate pudding and call it a day. Nice and smooth, delicious. Okay, so we can put it onto our cooled cake. And you can see the edges sort of souffled a little bit and then broke back down. So you have those beautiful, crispy, chocolatey edges and then a really fudgy, dense brownie cake in the center. So now we can put our custard right on top of our cake. I like to keep it sort of in the center so that you can still see those beautiful broken edges. It's kind of a firm custard because it has to be sliceable, so it holds pretty patterns. So now you cover this with plastic wrap, and you want to press the plastic gently into the custard. You could also use wax paper if you don't want to use plastic. This is just to prevent a pudding skin from forming, but I know a lot of people that love pudding skin, so you do whatever makes you happy. The last step to our pie / cake, now I don't know what to call it, is to put some whipped cream on it. And I have 1.5 cups of heavy cream, cold heavy cream in my mixer. I'm not adding any confectioner sugar or anything to this whipped cream, mostly because this cake is super sweet and super rich, so you don't need any added sugar. It's still a little bit loose, but I like to just do the last little bit by hand. There we go. That looks good. It's a lot of whipped cream. Holy moly. Like I said, this is not a light dessert, but it's a fun dessert. Looks pretty good. Now I can slice myself a piece. It's only 11:57, but it seems like the perfect time to have a big slice of mud pie. You see, there's like this fudgy, fudgy, fudgy brownie, and then custard, and then tons of whipped cream. It's messy, but it's good. All the different textures are really, really nice. You have a little bit of crunch from the crust, you have this dense, chewy brownie cake, then luscious custard, and then a big shock of whipped cream. You'd think it was gonna be too sweet, but all together, it works really nicely. I've been calling this a cake, I've been calling it a pie. I'm not quite sure what it is, but I know that it's delicious and I know that you're gonna love it. So I hope you give it a try.